dressed up. Happy Halloween! This is my Gothtober wrap up. I've had to wait a couple of days. It's not Halloween anymore. It's the 3rd of November. But I had to wait a couple of days to just get over it. Just to get, like, I don't know if you guys get this, but I get a real social hangover where if I've spent a long time on a project or if I've hung out with lots of people all at once, that I then just need 2 or 3 days to just not speak to anybody. And that is basically where I've been. So you may have seen, like, I've not been on Twitter as much. Like, I obviously posted my November TBR, but I recorded that a while ago. It's been fantastic. I just want to start by saying a massive thank you to Olivia and Tish, who have been an absolute rock this entire month. Thank you to everyone who has taken part in Gothtober. Like, I really didn't expect it to get to where it did. We've got nearly 700 people following the Twitter. There are so many TBR videos that I still haven't seen because I'm still finding them. Like, the Gothtober vlogs, I did not expect anyone to vlog their experience. Like, that is just... thank you. Like, genuinely. I'm just absolutely amazed that anyone would enjoy something that I made that much. Like, I was trying to be sincere. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the books that I actually read through Gothtober, because obviously I had my original TBR. I didn't stick to it. So if you didn't stick to your Gothtober TBR, I'm not mad about it, obviously, because I had to be a hypocrite. So we're going to start with the books that I DNF'd, the ones that I didn't finish but I plan to finish, and then we'll talk about my completed TBR for Gothtober. I read a book for every single prompt except one, and that I didn't think I was going to be able to do that. I know I set the prompts. Alright. I know I set the prompts, but yeah, I need to believe in myself a little bit more, is what I need to do. Anyway, so let's talk about the books that I didn't. I intentionally DNF'd. So the first one is The Lying Game. I have read The Women in Cabin 13, I think it's called, by Ruth Ware, and I really liked the style of her writing in her thriller. And I don't know if I'm just misremembering that, or if it's just a case of I read it so long ago that it's just not what I like anymore. But I really didn't enjoy this. I got 108 pages in before I gave up. I know the main character is a new mum and she spends a lot of those 108 pages talking about her baby. And the whole time I was kind of playing out in my mind, I was like, either it's important because she's a new mum and that's her demographic, or something is going to happen to the baby. And I didn't want to stick around for either of those things. So it wasn't even that I was tense and intrigued, it was just, for the most part, it was just really slow and just didn't hold my attention. And I was like, oh no, am I just not a fan of thrillers anymore, or I'm not a fan of Ruth Ware anymore? Because there's another thriller in this that I did finish that I'll get to in a minute that I was just like, that was pants as well. And I was like, maybe it's just not for me. Maybe thrillers just aren't for me. And I got 108 pages in and I thought, I've got other books with liars in them. Like, nearly every book that I read, my cat is trying to attack my hand. Every book that I read has a liar in it. So it was going to be the easiest prompt to tick off. So why was I going to waste my time on 400 pages that were just boring me? So I DNF'd it. The next one that I DNF'd was Stephen Fry's Heroes. Now, I had originally intended to do this one as an audiobook because I have the CD that it's my dad's, but I had the CD audiobook. It didn't have a great start because originally I was playing it through iTunes because it's a CD and I forgot that my iTunes was on shuffle. So I thought, oh, that's a really interesting fractured structure. No, Hannah, you're an idiot and you're not listening to an audiobook, right? Like, I don't know how I managed that. But anyway, once I was then like listening to it in the order it was supposed to be in, the structure of it was really plain and quite basic. I feel like this is for people who have a vague interest in Greek literature, but they're not nerds for it. And I am a nerd for it. And not to the extent where, like, that's not how that story goes, you can't have that adaptation, but just in the, that doesn't feel honest to the story, or even like a homage to like how you would style that writing. And then what made it worse is, in the audiobook, all the Greek characters have West Country accents. Have you ever heard Achilles and Patroclus talking to each other in a West Country accent? It's an experience. I hated it, and I didn't have time to read it. So I didn't. As I said, there was only one prompt that I didn't hit, and that was my oldest purchase. I didn't read Blue Bloods, I didn't even pick it up, I didn't even. It was at the bottom of the pile the entire time. I couldn't even be bothered to try and find an audiobook for it so that I could cram it in. I just decided, no, it'll go back as my TBR vet, and I'll try and get it read another time. Maybe. Didn't finish Solas. Now, Solas wasn't originally on my TBR, but Carolyn, who very kindly gifted this to me, picked it during the live stream for me to read because she was also going to read it, and the first 50 pages were very, very entertaining, and then I got a bit stuck with it, and then there were just other things on my TBR that caught my interest more, so I just didn't pick it up. I am 74 pages in, so like I said, it really wasn't long after the live that I just put it down again and didn't pick it up. It's an interesting one. It's definitely by an American trying to do British accents, and that's a thing. So anyway, yeah, didn't finish that one. Hopefully will. Hopefully it'll change my mind. Because there are books that I've read this year that I didn't enjoy the first 100 pages, but there was something in it that caught my interest and then took me to the end and I loved it. I'm hoping that this is the case, but yeah, so I haven't quite finished that one. We're going to keep pushing through with this one though. I did the audiobook for Fellowship of the Ring because I didn't think I would have time to read it properly during Gothtober, but I am still doing Tolkien along. I didn't even mention that I've got Two Towers in my TBR for this month. This was weird because obviously I read it as a kid, or my dad read it to me as a kid, and I really, really enjoyed the story, but my dad did not sing the songs and he didn't do little voices, but in the audiobook they sing every single song, and I'm not just saying like a little like they repeat, like they recite the poetry. I mean they sing the songs in the dwarfish voices. It's weird. There's bells involved. Tom Bombadil sings a lot. Like, a lot of what he says is very lyrical, so they really went to town on that. And I'm not gonna lie, that made me enjoy it less, but I still enjoy the narrative. It was still really interesting, but it's really hard going back to a book that you love and then having those things get in the way of it. Like, I still love it, obviously, but it's just, I could do without the singing. Which I appreciate is rich coming from me, because I start nearly every video singing to myself before turning off the music and turning on the camera, because that just gets me in the mood to be an idiot, I guess. So I know it's rich for me to be like, oh, no singing here please, but like, no singing please. Haha, which means I can now get onto the books that I actually finished. And I don't know. Let's start with the one that I didn't enjoy. So, as I said to you earlier, there was another thriller that do I like thrillers? Am I someone who enjoys thrillers? I don't know anymore. Maybe not. I read Yo NESBO's Macbeth. Now, I was promised that Yo NESBO is this really dark, gory, gritty writer that is really gonna get you and really gonna like get inside your head and mess it around and, you know, and this wasn't. And I don't know if that's because I know the story, because obviously it's Macbeth, but it's Macbeth as a police officer who is in the snipers, who has a drugged up girlfriend, who owns a casino, who basically runs this town, and it had potential, and yet it just fell completely flat for me. I just didn't enjoy it. I found it really boring. And I was just like, at this point, after these two, I was like, no, I don't like thrillers anymore. Thrillers aren't for me. Wah. And then I read My Sister, the Serial Killer. And I was like, oh no, thrillers are for me if you can find the right thriller. I loved this. I gave it 5 stars. The voice in it is fantastic. I obviously read this for author of colour, set in a foreign country, because it's set in Nigeria, and liar, grey morality, and this had me on the edge of my seat the entire way through. The characters in this are fantastic. The ending is completely not what I was expecting at all. It blew me away. And I know loads of people have been talking about it, and I don't know why I've waited so long, because I bought this back in November of last year when I did my tour of all the Kentish bookshops. What was I waiting for? It's fantastic. And if you're like, oh, I don't know if thrillers are for me, give this one a go, and then if this isn't for you, fair enough. thrillers aren't for you. But if you can honestly tell me after reading this book that it isn't incredible, I'll wait to see that. But absolutely loved it. 5 stars. 10 out of 10 would recommend. The other book that genuinely gave me the heebie-jeebies was Tales of Terror by Chris Priestley. Now, again, I don't think this was originally in my TBR. I think this was one of the ones I was like, oh, maybe I'll get to it as like a backup plan in case I didn't hit any of the prompts. And then Gavin chose it for me when we were doing that live stream, because I don't know if you watch the live streams, but I got the guest to pick a read for me in every single one. One, to just as a conversation starter, and 2, because I'm terrible at making decisions. So it was great to put that on someone else and make them choose for me. And wow, like this was so spooky. The first story I was kind of like and then after that I was like, oh no, I'm like on the edge of my seat. This is genuinely, my heart is racing. I mean, they don't mess around with middle grades. Like there's a bit where like okay, so spoiler warnings, but also trigger warnings. A cat loses its head and then the story just ends. That's it. Like, I am a cat person, that's not a surprise to anybody. I really don't like books that have violence against animals in it, but it wasn't even the violence that kind of got me, it was the just complete abrupt nature of it. Like because it's so short, so all the stories are really like small, and there's like this real psychological element, and the main character is really trying to like untie the mystery that his uncle is creating for him, but obviously it's supernatural, and there's like witch stories in this, and there's ghost stories in this, and then there's the kind of like what happens when you see your own future kind of stories in this. Like it's a complete mind fuck, and I cannot believe this is for kids because it was brutal. But like if other middle grades are this in depth when it comes to thrillers, I might only read middle grade thrillers from now on, because these had nothing on this. Like this was just expertly done. So we'll definitely be reading some more Chris Priestley. I've got nothing else to say. It scared the shit out of me. Thanks, Gavin, for picking that one for me. And then the only other scary read that I did was Anyas Ghost. Now, I bought this after my book buying ban because I hadn't read my Undead Characters one, which was also going to be... I think I had a couple of options, and I didn't read either of them, but I can't remember. But I think I might have also put Blue Bloods down for Undead Character. Might have been someone else. Anyway, I didn't have an Undead Character, so I decided to read this one. This also has a bone on the back, so that works quite nicely. And I read this November 1st. So I guess there were 2 prompts that I didn't hit in Gothtober, but it's my readathon, so who gives a shit? Anyway, I loved this. It's a graphic novel about a young Russian girl who is trying to just get by at school, and she finds this ghost when something horrible happens to her, and this ghost becomes her best friend, and they kind of like get on really, really well, and then weird things start to happen. And it, like, the plot twist of this, like, it was kind of there, it was kind of obvious that that was going to be the case, but it was just so cleverly done, and then genuinely really scary at the end, because you don't know what's going to happen. Like, these horrible things start happening to this girl and her family, and it was a roller coaster, and I finished it in like an hour. I absolutely loved it. Yeah, 10 out of 10. Fantastic. So if you want the 3 genuinely spookiest stories of my month were Uncle Montague's Tales of Terror, My Sister the Serial Killer, and Anyas Ghost. So good. I also read Rebecca. Now, there was the Rebecca along. I haven't seen the film yet. I really wanted to watch the film shortly after reading this, and I know that they would, like, Kira and Jessica were doing the live tweet session, and then they were going to do like a live stream afterwards, and I caught a bit of the live stream, but my internet was crap, so I didn't actually get to see the whole thing, and I just was in the mood to read. I haven't opened Netflix in about 3 months. I don't know why I'm still paying for it, because I just keep choosing to read instead, and that is money that I could be spending on books rather than TV series I'm never going to finish. But anyway, I really enjoyed this. It is a very slow burn. It is very... Okay, so the comprehension is quite tricky on this. The opening chapters kind of build up this world for you, but there's a lot that's kind of in the subtext. I really didn't like the narrator, but that is because I don't like a narrator who waits around to be rescued, and she is so systematically bullied by everyone around her that I just wanted to shake her and be like, just tell them to fuck off. Like, you're the lady of the manor. Why the fuck are you taking this shit from everyone? They are nothing to you. Like, not even just in a classist way, because essentially it comes from classism. It's like the reason they're treating her like this in the first place, but just in a, you are a human being who doesn't deserve to be talked to like that. Like, Miss Danvers is iconic, but she is a bitch. Like, yeah, this blew me away. I'm so sorry, Mum, that I took so long to get to this. You were right. I don't know what your obsession is with giving me weird gothic-y books with really scary female, like, antagonists, but keep up the good work. I appreciate you. This is great. And that's kind of the end of, like, the gothic-y books that I read for Gothtober. Next on the list, Superior by Angela Saini. This is the book that I read for my author of colour. It is a non-fiction about the history of race and where it comes from. I thought it was going to be a kind of like a development on like the etymology of racism and why we have racism, but it is so much more in depth than that. It really is about how society builds itself up on an us and them kind of stance, how we have always defined ourselves based on comparisons to others, and how racism isn't something you need to be scared of on the streets. Like, it's not the thug with the skinhead and the Nazi tattoo that you need to worry about, although yes, you definitely need to worry about them. It is also the scholars and the scientists who are creating the evidence that then fuels that neo-Nazi's ideals. Fascinating and so good, and I just keep throwing this at people that I care about to read because it just blew my mind. And if you're like, oh, I'm not a massive fan of non-fiction, listen to the audiobook, because Angela Saini narrates it and you can hear in her inflection how important it is to have this conversation. If you think you're not a racist, I think it will really open your eyes to the microcosms that are just ingrained. Not even the ones that are like microaggressions, but just even the kind of world that we create around ourselves in this society, in this blanket that we protect ourselves with. Like, it just... I'm going to reread it. I already know I'm going to reread it again next year because it was fantastic. And I'm going to be also picking up Inferior by Angela Saini, which is along the same lines but looking at the battle of the sexes. So I'm intrigued. So I finally finished Girl, Woman, Other. I thought I was 100 pages into this when I started, but I wasn't. I was 30. So I have counted this for Gothtober because I think, even though I didn't necessarily start it in October, it did fit the prompt of female protagonist, which meant that I could use another one for the liars because I'd already dumped Lying Game. So this was my female protagonist. This is a really fun look at the different perspectives of women, and what I loved is the fact that they are all individuals and they are all isolated in their own little feminist narratives, but they are all connected by this play that the opening character is producing. And it really looks at every facet of, well, not every facet, because it's tricky, because although it's looking at individual facets, it's obviously looking at a variety of them, and it is really easy to find one that you're like, oh, that's me. Like, I immediately relate to that character. And even when they do something wrong or they do something stupid, like, you still... And I know, like, it's interesting because you know you shouldn't relate to a character just to understand them. But what this book does really cleverly is, even if there's just one character that you relate to, there is still so much you can learn from the other characters because of the way they interact with each other and the way they support or put down each other. And there's little lessons in it, those little bruise moments where you're like, oh, that hurt because of this, or oh, I take that away from that. But it's fiction, and you just kind of fall into this narrative of their lives, and there are lots of time jumps, and the structure is really interesting because although it kind of all takes place in one day, they're obviously flashing back to previous moments, and it builds up their lives, and it's the important moments, those key elements of who they are, and not just where they grew up and the colour of their skin, because they are all women of colour, but they're all women of colour of different shades, and therefore they've had different struggles because those with darker skin were treated in different ways, and those who were older experienced racism in a time when racism was just inherently accepted, versus the younger ones who were like, well, this isn't acceptable anymore, and kind of challenging it, and the clash of like those personalities, because you know, the older generation kind of like, you don't need to make such a loud fuss about it, we just got on. And it's just fascinating, and it's so well crafted. And like, I have a real issue with Booker Prize winners anyway, because a lot of them are written in this really convoluted, pretentious way that makes literary fiction inaccessible to people that are outside of the industry or outside of people who really focus on those genres. Like, if you enjoy commercial fiction, you're seen as inferior anyway. But what I love about Bernardina Baristo is the fact that because she is that poet and she is used to tapping into what her audience understands and that accessibility, her writing is accessible too. So you're not walking into this being like, what a pretentious asshole. Like, there is just so much in here that is funny and happy and good, which is also unfamiliar in Booker Prizes. That it doesn't matter when those sad moments happen, they are fleeting, they are painful, but it's life, and loved it. If I could have more books just like this, that just have those little snippets of characters. I like books that are character driven, and this is wholly that. There isn't really a lot of plot to this. They're all going to a play, that's the plot, but it's just the individual moments just fucking make this book. Like, it's so good. I love this. I need to stop gushing because I'm going to run out of energy. I read Shadow and Bone from the Grishaverse. Now, I have the full set. I've never read them. I've obviously only read Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and I really enjoyed that. Her YA is tropey, but she has a really strong writing style. I really, really like it. I can see why people who like Sarah J Maas are also massive Leigh Bardugo fans. I feel like as contenders, they are very, very similar writing and style. They have very, very similar characters. So it is one of those things where if you run out of books of one, you can tap into the other, or like, and switch between the two. I am really intrigued to see where this goes. There were a few plot points that I felt were just kind of rushed towards the end. They weren't really given enough time to bed in. The fact that the character is so isolated was interesting, but again, because she's surrounded by people who are interested in her, it was kind of the Bella Swan moment where she's like, I'm a loner and I don't have any friends, when she's literally got people throwing themselves at her to be her friend. So when it turns out that the people that she cares about have betrayed her, it didn't hit the same. What I really loved is in this copy it has obviously the additional chapters at the end from her friend who's betrayed her's perspective. I loved that. I would happily read an entire book of just her perspective. So I'm intrigued to see how it's developed. I'm going to move on to Siege and Storm in November because I don't really want to wait. Like, no one is surprised that I enjoyed this. No one. Not even me. But my favourite was, I don't know why I said it like that. I'm so weird. My favourite was Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. Now, I know that The Cruel Prince is very contentious. People either love it or hate it. I'm going to tell you exactly why I love this series. With the others, with, you know, like Shadow and Bone and like Solas, any of those, the character spends a lot of time thinking through their feelings, thinking through their actions, thinking about the things they've seen and experienced, and they're making decisions. Not with this one. She doesn't think, she just acts. Like, it is just constant action. She has a problem, she solves it. I do wish she'd spent a little longer interviewing her sister, because I feel like she just got away with everything, didn't she? Like, Tamlin's just, I still hate her. I still hate her. I get it, but I still hate her. And I feel like Jude just goes in guns blazing, she's got a plan, everything happens really fast. I felt like the ending was, it's not what I wanted. It wasn't weak, it just wasn't what I wanted, but that's fine. And it's just powerful, like, it punches you in the face with its amazing fantasy-ness, and I appreciate that people who know a lot about fairy tales and fae don't enjoy it, but I enjoy it. I love the banter, it had me laughing. I love this series. I'm sad this series is over. I think I'll leave it there because otherwise I'm just gonna gush again. But I had a really good month of books. Like, I don't know, I keep saying like. I'm regressing into the teenage self. I guess that's what happens when you spend a month listening to loud and angry music that you listened to as a kid and reading books that your goth wannabe self would have absolutely adored. But I had a really good month of books. I had a lot of fun doing the live streams. Thank you again to everyone who came and co-hosted that with me. Like, that was so much fun. The people who entered the scavenger hunt, that was great. This month was perfect. I think I'm gonna leave it there. So let me know what your favourite read of Gothtober was if you got involved. If not, just let me know what your favourite read of October was. And other than that, have a nice day. Which one was that gonna be? Oh, I think I changed. Oh shit. Did you hear that? Ow.